Hey, folks, thanks for being with us here today. I'm going to say hello to people while Facebook comes on. We've got Woodstock, Georgia here. We've got Vancouver, Washington, Richmond, Virginia, Northern Utah. I assume we have, hi, Bonnie, hooray, yes. I assume we have some people here from Maine. We have Seattle. And here we go. Oakland, California, New York City, Florida, Saco. Thank you, Tonya, for being here. Ann Arbor, Michigan. Say hi to my daughter while you're out there. Aurora, West Virginia, Fairfax, Virginia, California, Charlottesville, Seattle, Washington, Reno. Now people are coming in fast and furious. I'm still not seeing Facebook. But here you are, Kansas City, Missouri, Canada, Chicago, Springfield, Illinois. Thank you all for being here, and thank you too for being here. The governor of Maine, Janet Mills, is with us today. She has recently announced that she is running for Senate, and I find this a really fascinating moment in national history, which I do. I don't really do state history, but because of this governor and because of this particular race, the state race has real national implications. And I'm interested in talking to the governor about not only this political moment, but the change in the Democratic Party and the change in national politics in this moment. So to that end, she agreed to talk with me. First of all, thank you very much for being here, Governor.
Thank you, Heather.
So one of the things that interests me right now, Governor, is that there is, it seems to me anyway, at the national level, a real push for the National Democratic Party to stand up more strongly than it has been to Donald Trump, or at least more than it has appeared to be standing up to Donald Trump. And the reason that interests me with regard to you is because you, of course, were one of the first people to stand up to Donald Trump on a national scale. And it was pretty expletive dramatic when you did. And I wonder if you could start with that, what you were thinking, why you did it, and what implications that has for thinking about ways to fight back against the Trump administration.
Sure, thank you. That February morning in the White House, I was not expecting an encounter with the President of the United States, I'll tell you that. And he had been going on for a good hour and a quarter, sort of campaign style, giving a kind of ranting speech, mostly about how bad he thought Biden was, things of that sort. And I was already like asking my friends at the table, can we just leave? Because this isn't productive, It was pretty frustrating. And then he turned on me in the context of this executive order he had issued involving transports. And as you know, he said, are you going to follow my order? And I said, I'm following state and federal law. As an attorney and as American citizen, that's what I thought was the appropriate response. He said again, dared me again. I said again, I'm going to follow state and federal law. And then he said, well, you better follow, something like that. Then he said, I or we are the law. Well, to me, that was a jaw-dropping moment. Not just for me, but I guess a lot of other people heard it. I said that because, I say that was a jaw-dropping moment because it harkens back to Louis XIV, I am the law, l'état c'est moi. And the Constitution, as you know, tells the president that the president must take care that the laws be faithfully executed. And so when he said, you better follow my directive, my executive order, or you're going to lose all your federal money. That's when I said, basically, hey, I'll see you in court. And then we did see him in court. A few weeks later, his Department of Agriculture's Brooke Rollins sent me this weird letter saying she was cutting off the spigot, not going to pay for school lunch programs in Maine anymore. Well, there's 172,000 kids in Maine who get school lunch with the help of some federal money. I thought that's a weird thing to do, cut off school lunch for kids. And so we filed suit immediately. Within 1 week, we got a 70-page order from a Republican-nominated judge in Portland, Maine, who gave us a temporary restraining order against the federal government, saying they couldn't just cut off funds for the school lunch program and other things because they disagreed with Maine law on transgender sports, whatever. To me, it wasn't the issue. The issue wasn't about sports. The issue is about the rule of law and about upholding the Constitution and the very important principle of separation of powers and the balancing of powers that Constitution embodies. I gave a talk the other night to Maine lawyers for the rule of law. I told them I thought that was redundant. All lawyers should be for the rule of law, right? But that what's embodied in our Constitution is too valuable, too highly prized to give up now, not to stand up whenever we see a violation of these basic fundamental rights, the right to speak up, the right to stand up for your people, the right to redress grievances, the right to petition government, the right to free speech, obviously. And those are the battles that are happening now all across the country, and it's really disturbing to me. I've been thinking about this for a while, and I've been thinking about maybe things will change. Maybe things will turn for the better, but it hasn't. And every day when I read the news and I read your column and I watch things like Colbert and Kimmel and I read the national news, I keep hearing about things that are going on that are very disturbing, like what's happening in Chicago right now, what happened in Los Angeles, what's happening in the streets of cities and towns across this country. And Mr. Trump, a year ago, ran on a promise that he would bring down inflation, that he would lower prices at the grocery stores. I don't see that at all. I see these whipsaw tariffs, this roller coaster economy that he's propelled us into, being damaging to Maine people. And I see the threats to healthcare being really, really frightening. Taking away Medicaid, taking away SNAP benefits for small children. Why would you do that? Why do you do that? So go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, no, I'm back. I'm back on the, I share your dismay, but I'm back on the relationship between the nation and what you were just talking about and the state of Maine, because I think this is a problem that a lot of people, not only the lawmakers in states, but also individuals in states, are really having. And that's that although, you garnered a lot of attention standing up for Trump, standing up against Trump, I'm sorry, that actually did come back and hurt the people of the state of Maine in a way that it makes it clear that you're going to have to find ways both to resist the federal government and to recognize that you've got to find some way in a state to make Trump voters happy enough to keep you in office, which, that's one of the reasons I think you've decided to run for Senate, is because you have in the past managed to win at a statewide level, which is hard to do in the state of Maine when you have the two districts that are so very different from each other. So, how did you manage that recognition that for all the fact that a lot of people thought it was great that you stood up to Trump, other people in the state of Maine said, you just hurt our funding and, we love Trump. We don't want you out there defending trans athletes in the two schools in Maine where it was an issue.
Yeah, got it. Thank you. That's a great question. I think Maine people are pretty independent-minded. I grew up in rural Western Maine. My father was a country lawyer, and he always said, you got to stand up to the bullies. Don't give them an inch because they'll never stop. And I firmly believe that. You got to stand up for other people. And so I've also said, when Trump is doing something that I think benefits Maine people, I'll welcome it. When he does things that are harming Maine people, I will oppose him. And that's been my position all along. It was my position when I was governor early on, when he was president the first term. I stood up to him, but I welcomed good things that he was doing. And so I think people respect that. Here's the thing. I think Maine people want honesty. And with me, what you see is what you get. Trump supporters know that. Non-Trump supporters know that. People can disagree with me on specific issues. or they can agree with me, but they know what they see is what they get. I see some what I call changes going on in sort of traditional Trump voters. They see what's going on at the grocery store. They see the prices. They see that Canadian people didn't come here nearly as much as they did in the past this summer. They didn't patronize our small businesses up and down the coast and in rural Maine as well. They didn't because of Trump's rhetoric, because he disparaged them so blatantly. And I don't think Maine people agree with that kind of rhetoric. They don't want to hear that kind of stuff. And
From my end, one of us is frozen. It could be me. If it is not, then,
business
please, Governor.
family. Oh, go ahead.
One of us froze. I don't know which one it was. So I was saying, if it's me, keep on going. But otherwise, you were talking about how Mainers don't like that kind of talk. It did things like, in fact, keep our Canadian neighbors away from us for the summer. But I'm wondering about the problems of governance, and like you
Hmm.
say, standing up to bullies. Now, I know that you got involved in politics in the beginning, I believe, because you recognized that there was no defense of women in the government. Is that correct?
Yeah, some time ago, I came back from a national women's conference, and a bunch of us from me were all pumped up and want to do some great things. We put in some legislation to help women who were displaced from their homes, and to help women, take a stand and improve their economics, and to help women who were victims of domestic violence. We saw these bills go through the process, and they got favorable testimony. Nobody opposed them, and then they landed in the back room of the appropriations table and went nowhere. And we said, "Whoa, we got to do something about this. We need to have a women's lobby." So we created the very first Maine women's lobby, and it is still today the longest existing women's lobby in the nation. And they've done some great things. So I was pleased to co-found that. And as Attorney General and as District Attorney and as Governor, I have stood up for women's programs. I've certainly stood up for the right to reproductive health care, especially since the Dobbs decision. I've worked with the legislature to make sure that protections exist in Maine statutes so that women can determine their futures and their fates, unlike women in states across this country where, they are actually literally dying on the doorsteps of emergency rooms because they can't get life-saving health care after a miscarriage. That's a tragedy of untold proportions. We protected that in Maine, and I'll continue to protect that in the United States Senate. So, yeah, women's issues are dear to me and personal to me and professional. And we've done pretty good work here in Maine, overcoming the Dobbs decision, locally at least, and providing a shield for those who would try to take those from other states who would take those rights away as well.
Well, and in terms of trying to govern and trying to use the government in a state in this moment, like, one of the things that we talk about with what I do is the use of state governments to promote the kind of legislation that the national government is killing. And Maine's been way out in front of that, has it not?
I think that's fair to say. And now, for instance, when Robert F. Kennedy Jr., whom Susan Collins supported, when he came out with his plan to change the vaccine protocols and discourage life-saving vaccines for children and for adults, I got together with Maura Healey and other governors from the Northeast region, and we together set up protocols so that our people, our residents, can have access to vaccines if they want them, and to restore and keep our public health infrastructure going at a time when Robert F. Kennedy Jr. wants to tear it apart. So we've done these things as coalitions. During Trump's first term, I joined the U.S. Climate Alliance because he had withdrawn from the Paris Accords and he kept calling climate change a hoax. He still does. Well, Jay Inslee and I co-chaired the alliance with many other states and did everything we could to keep action on climate change going. And we've done that in the state of Maine, done it in a lot of other states as well. Fighting back when the federal government wouldn't protect us, wouldn't take action. And we've seen more and more violent storms, extreme weather events. People know that this is happening. They know why it's happening, and why we've got to do something more to prevent them and to be more resilient. At the same time, this president is taking funds away. Look at Alaska just this week. My God, major flooding and storms. And he's not funding the relief. And he failed to fund the resiliency efforts some months ago that might have prevented these people losing their homes and their lives.
Yeah, I was reading that the National Weather Service's cutbacks were potentially affected the information about that coming storm, which has been so incredibly devastating in that coastline for sure. Now, Maine has also expanded the Medicaid, for example, under you as well, and something to do with nutrition in schools, right?
Oh gosh, yeah. Look, we've made a lot of progress in Maine on a number of areas: healthcare and education, climate action. These are all areas where I've focused and had as my priorities. But Medicaid, first day in office, I expanded Medicaid to 100,000 people in Maine. We expanded Medicaid, and now that health care is being threatened by the so-called Big Beautiful Bill, as is food benefits. SNAP benefits for thousands of Maine children and families. We provided free school meals in all the schools, regardless of income, so people don't have to stand in one line if they're poor and another line if they're not poor. That seemed to be a shame and stigmatizing to kids unnecessarily. We think kids need to learn on a full stomach, so we provide that. We provided free community college for 2 years for any recent high school grad. That's been a very popular program. So we've increased jobs, increased career training, increased wages for Maine people in those ways. Well, I think it's important that people are starting to remember what government is about now that things are being taken back, taken away. A lot of people are saying, well, what about the National Weather Service? What about school lunch programs? What about Pell Grants? What about every kind of thing? What about health care? And now with this debate in Washington between the competing CRs, continuing resolutions and whatnot, and extending the Affordable Care Act tax credits, I think people are seeing, whoa, tax credits? Why not continue them? Because more than 60,000 people in Maine, well more than 60,000 people, are able to pay their monthly insurance bill, health insurance bill, because of those tax credits. I don't think anybody wants to see them go away. So when our current senator, Senator Collins, last week called the Democratic proposals, quote, a poison pill, I had to think to myself, wait a minute, it's healthcare. With all due respect, I don't think healthcare is a poison pill or a poison anything.
Well, see, this is why I'm interested in governance in the state of Maine, because from where I sit anyway, Maine is a state that, unlike a number of purple states, has not been taken over by one side or the other. And you're making an argument, I think, for government that actually does stuff that people want, but that is not easy to do in this moment. And I'm wondering how you is there a secret to negotiating your way through being able to do these things in a state where your predecessor was a MAGA Trump Republican, Paula Page, and there's another election coming up. It seems to me that this is a little bit where the rubber meets the road in terms of governance, and I'm just wondering what that looks like as the governor of both District 1 and District 2, which is a much more bifurcated state than one that has 6 different districts, for example, of different flavors.
That's true, boy, oh boy. But I've been fortunate to be able to campaign in earlier years about all kinds of things across the state. I'm a second district person. I was born and raised in Farmington. I live in Farmington now. That's in the western part of the state, rural area. And I enjoy walking Main Street on Saturdays. I enjoy talking to people in the corner store and the barber shops and the Grange halls, finding out what's on their minds. And I think any political person, any person in public office needs to talk directly to the people. And that does two things. One is you find out what's on their minds, what the issues are, and what they're hearing and seeing. And two, it makes you more transparent, and you get to find common ground. I can walk into a restaurant or a diner in Farmington, Maine, and see people of all different political persuasions, but I will know them and they will know me. And I think finding common ground with people of different views is really, really important, whether it's the 1st District of Maine or the 2nd District of Maine. You know, I have differences of opinion with people in this 1st District as well as the 2nd District, but they know where I stand. You know, what you see is what you get, I think.
So that's really interesting. That's not where I thought you would go with that. And that speaks to the actual original nature of the idea of representative government, that you actually know your representatives. And it's true. I know the state. I have 2 state senators who live near me. I know them both by name. And I'm sure that's not the case if you live in New York City or California. That's really interesting. Since I have you, I want to ask you one thing that may be out of your ken, and if so, I'm sorry. I didn't mention this to the comms people that I was talking to about this interview. It is my understanding that Maine has the best rate of people who are incarcerated, and then when they go out, do not go back into incarceration. I've never heard that, and I've never seen anybody mention it. What's going on?
I think that's true. What's going on is I love the people in my cabinet. I mean, I hired them not necessarily knowing all of them at the time, but knowing that they had the capability of being great. And during the pandemic, every one of them stepped to the plate and was actually very great. Randy Liberty, who's the Commissioner of Corrections, which is a strange name for that department, isn't it? He's just the most humane person. He really believes in redemption. And he's incorporated so many programs in the prison system, the state prison, where people are serving potentially very lengthy sentences. But he took took money from the what's her name? Dorothy, what's her name? Anyway, money from that scholarship fund, and provided a good education to any inmates who want it, any residents of the prisons. We have a debate team at the prison, and their first time out, I think 2 years ago now, they debated MIT and they won 5-0. That was amazing. So there's a lot of talent there. And he wants to make sure that, and we all want to make sure that when people are released, because most of them will be out again in society, that they have the tools to make a living and be a productive member of society again. And he's provided medication-assisted treatment for substance use disorders. Anybody who wants it. That's been a big boon as well. And all kinds of job training, including software designs, software engineering, those kinds of things where people can make pretty good money. So the number of things he's done, they're just way outside the box and so creative. I'm very proud of that department and proud of him.
Well, I feel like in our country, we don't talk enough about our prison systems. And I read that about Maine, and I'm like, Maine? Really? And
Yeah.
and so education, substance, job training, and substance abuse disorder treatment. That seems like something we could take on a national scale, doesn't it?
We could indeed.
Well, thank you. It's been really interesting to figure out. I think this relation, how you play a system that a system of governance that tries to do the best for a state's citizens. At the same time, there is this huge national battle going on. Is really interesting. And it's been, you have always been, to my mind, focused on the state of Maine. And yet now you're on on the national board over something that seems to be a national fight even more than it is about the state of Maine. And I think that's a really interesting problem of governance. And I don't quite know how one does it, but I appreciate the chance to talk to somebody who is doing it apparently pretty successfully.
Thank you. I appreciate your time too. And I'm looking forward to taking on this campaign, taking on the entrenched incumbent, defeating the incumbent, Susan Collins, and getting down to Washington and making my case again, doing whatever I can to for the people of Maine.
Well, thank you and best of luck to you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Heather. Thank you for all you do. It's amazing.